Washington, UCLA, Friday Night Lights. It's time for some keys to the game.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hansen. He's site editor with Alphonzo Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thanks for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lars got a really fun show coming at all the everydayers today. As they know, it's the Friday show. We love it. Bold predictions, your score prediction, defensive keys to the game, offensive keys to the game. It is a Friday night game too, so we'll be going live after the game. Once we get back, it's going to be a lot of fun. We love it. And for all that, for all the updates, the post game, make sure you hit that subscribe button because you'll get notified when we do go live after a game. And it just helps you keep in touch with us. We're going to be putting out so much stuff throughout the season, the off season, maybe some more basketball stuff. We'll see. A lot of fun stuff coming, but that's in the future. The present, UCLA. Lars, what's your first key to a Washington victory on the offensive side of the ball?
You know, this is a really interesting game for me because you think about what UCLA's strengths are: stopping the run. You know, what are their weaknesses? Pass game. What strength and weakness? The exact opposite. You know, no offense to Will and Damon, but let's be real. The offensive line is kind of the Achilles heel of this entire offense. So
Sure.
For me, finding it's going to go back to the Iowa game. Just establish the trenches. Find a way to just get score early. I guess we can kind of tie those two in together because, I mean, they're all the same keys at the end of the day. But it's really just get that offensive line winning early. Get that momentum going early because if you have, let's say, a 3-and-out or, shout out to Grady for banging off the 45-yarder. But, you need to establish some rhythm early on. So I think, let's kind of just tie all that together. Say, get in rhythm early, whether that means offensive line, passing, whatever. Just get in sync because that's something they have not done in a while.
I'm with you there, where it segues perfectly into my number one key, which is what we talked about on yesterday's show. It's establish Denzel Boston, where we talked about it. He had 9 catches for 99 yards against USC in their last home game. But if you take that out, he had 126 yards in their previous 3 road games. That's Penn State, that's Indiana, and that's Iowa. He has not scored a touchdown since the Iowa game. This is a guy where if you're not utilizing him as much as you possibly can, again, we said it yesterday, there are a lot of other factors that go into that. Offensive line play, just different things that are going on. For sure, it's not necessarily any one person's fault that he's not more involved. But in a game like this, against a UCLA secondary that's allowing 253 yards per game through the air, you need to find a way to use that guy as much as you possibly can. And this is the perfect way to get him right and just really establish him. Where you talk about building for 2025, which has become the key and just one of the big themes of the show over the last couple of weeks, because that's what Jedd's whole mindset has been. Denzel is a huge part of that. Where, Lars, what's a really nice thing to help Damon Williams out when he starts in 2025? It's a guy like Denzel Boston, where if you're not turning to him and developing him as much as you possibly can for that season, you've got to find more ways to do that. You've got to find ways to continue to improve and do that as much as you possibly can. And this is a really great passing offense. They've done a really great job. Kaleki Latu coming along with Giles Jackson, with Jeremiah Hunter, with all the guys that are catching the ball in this offense. They're all extremely talented. And Denzel is clearly the best of that bunch, and not utilizing him as much as you possibly can just is not helping anything.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm going to basically just replace the name, but same principle.
Sure.
Senior night, right?
Yeah.
The guy who's the guy that was a senior in that room who we've been talking about ad nauseum.
Oh, there are a lot of them. I'm going to go Jeremiah Hunter for this one, though.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I'm going with this. And that's no shot to Giles because Giles does something different than both Denzel and Jeremiah. Let's be clear about that. Giles is kind of the X factor in that regard. This is a game where, okay, I agree. Absolutely. Get the ball to Denzel. And by the way, they tried doing that against Penn State. I mean, let's be real. Like, that first drive, was clear. Jedd was like, get the ball to Denzel. Get the ball to Denzel. Get the ball to Denzel. Okay, fine. At some point, can we get the ball to Jeremiah, please? And I know Jedd has said, well, hey, switch ways and circumstances. I don't care. I don't care at this point. You have a veteran receiver, a weak secondary you're going against. You should have 3 receivers in position to be over 75 yards.
Yeah.
Giles, Jeremiah, and Denzel. Now, whichever one of them crest over 100, so be it. But all three of those guys should have at least 4 targets, 4 catches, and 60-plus yards. Jeremiah is a guy where I look at against Rutgers and against Indiana, he had 4 for 60 and I think 6 for 67. But he hasn't caught a touchdown since,
Michigan, I want to say?
World War II. I was going to say, Michigan or Eastern Michigan. And so, it's a matter of, and by the way, this is something I kind of spurred on you before, earlier in the week when I talked about, do you know who can come back next season? It's not Giles. Giles is out. Giles doesn't have anything left. Jeremiah Hunter did play in 2020. So he has that extra kicker year if he really wants to, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I do believe there's maybe a potential waiver in that regard for that. So with that being said, if you want to talk about, you might have to bring in another veteran receiver next year, unless you want to really roll with Denzel and 3 or 4 freshmen or redshirt freshmen and sophomores, because Audric burned his redshirt. Shout out to the staff for that. But, it's just a matter of, okay, none of it's really made sense. This is the one last week to be like, you know what? Before we get into next week or 2 weeks from now, Jeremiah deserves to go off in his last game at Husky Stadium. Not that Denzel doesn't. But I think actually it almost feeds off your point of, if Denzel's getting doubled, look at Jeremiah.
Yeah. I like where you're going with that, because that is a huge part of this. But I want to kind of tie it all back together with your first point, because none of this works if the offensive line doesn't work. That's the biggest thing here, where establishing the run with Jonah Coleman. We'll see how much they're able to do that, how much they want to do that against this really good UCLA run defense. But at the same point, what's it going to look like when Will Rogers does drop back to pass? Is he going to be able to take advantage of the secondary because he has time to throw? And that starts at left tackle. We'll see what happens with Maximus McCree, where Jedd said if he was able to play, he'd have to do it with the brace on. So we'll see it, because Lars, as you said, he didn't have it on the sidelines against Penn State. Maybe they knew they weren't going to play him, so they just didn't have him warm up with one. We saw him warm up with it on against USC, so that's something I'm watching. Is Kaylee Tafai be able to play? Jedd said it doesn't sound like a serious long-term injury that he suffered against Penn State, so that'd be a positive. And then what's the interior going to look like? Are we going to see a rotation at left guard? Is it going to be guard? Is it going to be Enoch? We're going to see all of Lane at right guard where he looked solid. I have so many questions about the offensive line, but that's what it all comes back to at the end of the day, is can you block for Will Rogers?
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because UCLA hasn't had a game where they don't have at least 1 sack since Oregon on September 28th. They've had at least 1 sack per game every single game. They had 1 against Penn State, so you're probably thinking more than that. 3 against Minnesota, 4 against Nebraska, and 3 against Iowa. The fact they got 3 sacks against Iowa, can we just run that Washington tape back, please?
Yeah,
that's a concern. That's a concern. That's a real concern. And you talk about boy,
that's also, you can look at that and say, and it's not an excuse. You look at it, you can say short week on the road, multiple time zone thing. There are other ways you can look at it where Iowa's kind of fallen off since the Washington game, where that I feel like these are all little factors you have to take into account there. Shout out UW commit, one-time UW commit Jackson Stratton, who played quarterback for Iowa in that game. A lot of different things you can look at and say, maybe this is what happened, but you're not wrong. That's something that we need to see, is make sure that Will Rogers has time to throw. And Will just needs to get the ball out quickly. If he can do that and stay in rhythm, it feels like Washington has many different ways they can take advantage of this UCLA secondary. But Lars, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. Lars, let's get on to the defensive side here. What's your biggest key on the defensive side to shutting down this UCLA offense?
contain Ethan Garbers, because what was one thing that Drew Aller did last week? I mean, there was a lot of things he did. Shout out Drew. But what was one main thing he did that really can't happen and was honestly reprehensible? I can count over half,
in my opinion.
Well, way too much time, but also when UW pressured him and when they had chances to get sacked, there was about 5 or 6 missed sacks. Straight up, just straight up missed sacks. Like, and I'm talking like maybe 2-on-1 play. And I'm not saying Drew Aller is the most athletic quarterback. I would probably say Ethan's slightly more athletic than him in terms of as a true runner. But it all kind of squares up into the same, where if Ethan had time to sit back and pass, that's one thing. But I think where's Washington gotten burned more than anything, it's those buying time plays. It's those, hey, well, we got everyone covered. Oh, now we just gave up a 3rd and 7 for 25 because the DBs can only hold up for 7 seconds instead of 25.
So I want to tie this in perfectly to a conversation that you and I had on yesterday's show, where you expressed some concerns in the secondary, which I believe are fair, but I disagreed. And this is one of the big reasons why. Where if you're able to wrap up, if you're able to get after the quarterback, which we know Washington has the edge rushers to be able to do with or without Zach Durfee. We've seen them been able to rush the passer, where that's something, if you're able to contain Ethan Garbers and you're able to just keep him inside the pocket, not give him a lot of time and just collapse it instead of letting him escape, letting him step up, letting him do all these different things. That's huge, because we know Washington secondary is still, in terms of yardage wise, it's still number 1 in the Big Ten, but this has still been one of the nation's best secondaries a year just throughout the season. And a big part of that is going to be getting back Thaddeus Dixon. So when I look at this team and I look at not only how UCLA wants to beat you, but how Steve Belichick wants to just scheme his defense and how he has all season long, I look at it and I just say, yes, it's that. It's find ways to contain Ethan Garbers and get him on the ground, because we've seen the cover 0 look. We've seen them just throw as many guys as you can at the quarterback. And this feels like a week where they're going to do that as much as they possibly can, because they have the bodies to be able to do it. And they have the bodies on the back end to cover.
They do have the bodies on the back end to cover. And that's what kind of was so perplexing at times against Penn State, is how are you kind of giving up these opportunities? But for me, it's, okay, how much? I mean, Thad's been good. Don't get me wrong. I think that was. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is a significant point of emphasis there. But there's even been times when Thad's gotten beat, and so I think it's a matter of. I still don't know if Washington has played a full 60-minute game this season, and it's been similar. At times on offense, at times on defense, and so this is the game. Because it ain't happening in 2 weeks. This is the game where you need to play a full 60 minutes. And that starts on defense, I think, in my opinion, because the defense clearly is the one who's going to carry this team. If Washington wins this weekend or on Friday night, it's going to be because of the defense. There's going to be stops that need to be made. Because, again, same thing with USC, where USC took the lead late, or you took the lead in the 3rd quarter. Washington was able to come back because the defense stepped up. Same thing against Penn State, where the Penn State only scored 1 touchdown in the second half. Granted, we talked about how that was play calling and, Penn State kind of milking the clock away, which as they should do. But you only give up 1 touchdown in the second half. That's pretty good. You gave up 4 in the first half, so shout out for that. But it's a matter of, making sure whatever you do in the first half carries over into the second half.
So I like where you're going with that, Lars. Another big part of that for me when I look at this is find a way to lean on your seniors, because there are a lot of guys who are playing their college football game, all 3 levels of defense. Jacob Bandis, Carson Bruener, Alphonzo Tuputala, Cameron Fabiculon. There are a lot of guys you can look at and say, hey, yeah, this is their last ride. We got to go out there and win a game for them. Where you talk about playing a full 60 minutes of football, you can let that adrenaline, that emotion stay with you early. But as long as you're able to play disciplined and carry it with you throughout the ball game, that could work really, really well. Where I look at all these guys who, we talked about it earlier in the week, that deserve recognition for everything they've done for this program over the past 4, 5, 6 years, that there are a lot of important guys. And I feel like there are a lot of them on the defensive side, especially. And when I look at this game, it's finding ways to just stay disciplined as well, where UCLA when they've gone on this win streak, they found ways to take advantage of undisciplined play, whether it be Rutgers, Nebraska, Iowa, whoever it is you want to say. That's one thing they've done really, really well. So when I look at it in this game, if you can keep those guys, your leaders, keep them level-headed and make sure that they are not, trying to do a little too much, try to make a big play in their last game, and they end up, missing a tackle, letting somebody get behind them and picking up 15, 20 yards. Those are things that I think are going to be important, yet some might go unnoticed factors in this ballgame.
No doubt. And I think it's also about capitalizing on the opportunities you have. Who do you think has more sacks? Who do you think has been sacked more this season, Will or Ethan?
Based on the way you're asking this question, I would say it's Ethan, but it's close.
So 6 more. So Will's been sacked 16 times. Ethan's been sacked 22. And the reason why I mentioned that is it's closing, it's finishing. And same thing, because as you point, you talk about seniors and all this sort of stuff. It's senior night, blackout night. Finish the assignment. You look how great this defense started the season. Middle eight is what it is. But you look at everything that this team has done, where third down defense is what it is. And you look at UCLA's third down offense, passable, but not great. It's pretty decent. I think they're 41% right now. They had 9 of 14 against Iowa, which those are some Penn State numbers. So that would be my other key is get off the field and finish. Like those are the two things that really haven't happened since probably the Michigan game, maybe the USC game to a degree at times, but consistently for an entire game or at least for an entire half. And this is a game where if UCLA gets 1 or 2 extra possessions, UW's only favored by 3.5 on FanDuel last time I checked. So for me, it's if you can't finish some of those drives, or if again, we know Carson, Alphonzo, Void, all the seniors, those guys are going to show out. But it's a matter of when you have the opportunity to finish, you need to get off the field, because I guarantee you, if UCLA is able to get a couple extended drives and end up getting some points on them, do you have the faith in this offense to find it?
I think at home I do. Where that's one thing where they've looked like two completely different teams at home and on the road, and that's a big part of this. Where both sides of the ball have. Defensively, I kind of want to stick on the defensive side with this. I like where you're going with that, but I just think defensively, we've seen that energy of the crowd really factor in. Where you look at Carson's performance against USC, you can point to so many different things and say, yeah, this team has found a way to make plays at home. And for whatever reason, they couldn't make those on the road. Where, I think about Lance's 4th down stop against USC, Cameron Ficulana's pick against Michigan, where when you need those stops at home, you're getting them. You're finding ways for whatever it is. Whatever it is that you're doing differently, or you're feeding off the energy of the crowd, like I said, whatever it might be, that's just a little bit different. You're finding ways to do those things at home. And that's something I want to see change going forward. Sorry, I just want to make sure, because that's something I want to see change going forward. But for where we are, for where the season is right now, whatever that is, just tap into it one more time. And then you're bowl eligible, and you can find all these different things to correct and figure out over the course of the offseason.
Right. Well, and it's again, same thing with Carson Bruener, where he gets, I believe, 2 picks against, I think it was USC, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah. And so again, that was another home game. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because again, one of these might have to be housed. Like you might have to find 6 on defense at this point, because you know what? That might be a perfect segue into, you talk about seniors making their last message. It's also some freshmen's last message that, hey, you know what? Husky fans, if you don't come down to see us at Oregon and we don't make a bowl game, these are the lasting memories that you're going to have of some of these freshmen. So maybe Kamari House, ends up housing one. No pun intended. Actually, yes, absolutely.
I was going to say, no, that you were definitely intending that one. So I like where you're going with this, and maybe I'll let you have that in bold predictions when we get over there. But when I look at this game, that especially with the building blocks that these guys have been on defense for so long, that's the one thing I want to keep harping on, because it's something that is important in a game like this. And, football, which is a game of momentum, so much so in a game like this against two teams that are middle of the road in terms of the record and everything else. But finding ways to just have that edge and momentum and getting the crowd on your side and being at home are big factors. And it being senior night, being able to celebrate a guy like Carson Bruener, who was there through the ups and downs, Cam Ficulana, Alphonzo Tuputala, all those guys that I mentioned earlier, getting a chance to recognize those guys and having them have that one lasting memory. I love where you're going with that.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, you talk about Steve's mindset on defense of, look, we'll defend all blades of grass anywhere on the field. These guys have really taken to that. Carson's been, look, this is us. So maybe, doesn't drop a pick 6 this time. It's one of those sorts of things where for everything that these guys have started their career, especially the guys that came in 19, 20, and 21, like last year was great. The past 2 years have been great, but this is also a transition year. It's like, hey, you know what? Still leave the program better than you found it. I know you could have all gone last year, but this is your one last chance to say, hey, you know what? Thank you to the fans, and the fans also, by the way, giving the players encouragement in terms of, as you mentioned, like playing in that atmosphere, doing all those sorts of things. You're going to want to have a raucous crowd on Friday night. You just kind of have to hope that the weather and fans checking out on a 5-5 season don't do that, because these players deserve to get one last good send-off.
They absolutely do. Lars, let's get to our bold predictions. Right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We got some fun stuff coming at you for this weekend. I think it's going to be a really fun week across the NFL. And one guy, Lars and I love him. We believe in him all season long. Give me Roman Tomashoff anytime touchdown. Just go check out those odds over on FanDuel. After they make the change, Shane Waldron's not there anymore. Things are going to be a little different in Chicago for the rest of the year. Lars, I'm pretty sure it's my turn to go first this week for bold predictions. Oh, it is. All right. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, good, because this is one I wanted to steal from you no matter what. And that's Denzel Boston's stat line. I'm going to go extra bold, give you the full stat line here. I think he gets into double-digit catches, so give me 10 catches. I'm going to say 138 yards. I'm going to be real precise here. And I think he scores 2 touchdowns. I think, we talked about on Thursday's show that we haven't seen him reach the end zone in nearly a month. And I think Jedd Fisch knows that. And I think he's going to try to go to him early and often, get him in a rhythm. And against the UCLA secondary, which hasn't been particularly good, he's going to find a way to just say, hey, we're going to get the ball in this guy's hands early and often. We're going to make sure he makes plays for us. And then it's going to be one of those games where maybe it's pass to set up the run. You spread them out, and then you go to Jonah Coleman early and often later on in the ball game.
So I like that. I wasn't thinking Denzel. I was going to take the senior, or the guaranteed senior. That's Giles.
Okay.
Again, because ironically, as I'm looking at the passing or the receiving numbers, it's like, yeah, Denzel, and then there's just a host of others. Giles finally gets back on. I don't think gets back on track because it's not been his fault per se. But give me Giles 7 catches. 100. No. 90 yards and 1 touchdown. I was almost gonna say 110, but I'm like, nah, you know what? I think Denzel gets the 100. I like that, but I think two receivers have to have at least 1 touchdown. So the fact that you say Denzel has 1 and I said Giles has 1, preferably I want 1 more in there. So give me 3 total receiving touchdowns on the day for Washington.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'll take the Will Rogers stat line as well, where I'm not going to go completions. I know you like to do that. I like to leave those ones for you. I want to change this. I had 260 and 3 scores. I think he gets over 300 in this game, because this is also his senior night. That's another guy who you're sending off into the sunset. You want to make sure you send him out on the right note. And against this UCLA defense, which hasn't been particularly good against the pass, we're going to keep emphasizing that. I say 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I'll even give you the scores there. Oh, actually, no, I have them already, because I said 2 for Denzel. So yeah, 2 for Denzel and the 1 for Giles. I like that. All right.
That's a good sound. I mean, I've given up on attempting Will's completion percentage at this point, because with this offensive line, it could be 21 and 25 or 12 of 25, and that's no shot at Will. That's just a shot at the offensive line. But with that being said, let's go to the running backs. We need, as you mentioned, you need to run this out of the pass set up the run. I believe on FanDuel, Jonah Coleman is the highest, is the only favorite. Yep, only favorite for anytime touchdown. So give me, I'm going to parlay this here. UW has 2 rushing touchdowns at the end of this game.
Okay.
1 for Jonah, 1 for Adam Muhammad.
All right, we're going back to the well here. The Adam Muhammad anytime touchdown. That is one of my favorites. This is a guy who I I'm just so excited. I want to see how he gets used in this game, where we're bringing up the senior night thing because that is important. That is a factor here. Where let's see what Cam Davis's usage rate looks like. Let's see what Adams looks like. Maybe Jordan Washington gets back in there. We saw him get a touch last week. So I'm curious to see what that ends up being. But at the same point, Adam is somebody who we know he is just going to have a really bright future here. And you want to find a way to make sure you establish that as early as possible. So I like where you're going with that. I'm ready to flip over to the defensive side here. And I think this secondary comes down with 2 interceptions in this game. I think Cameron Fabiculon has one on senior night. And I think the other one is going to go to another senior. Give me Thad Dixon. I think those are going to be the 2 picks. I think this defense is going to find a way to attack Ethan Garbers early. I think the pass rush is going to get after him. I don't know if you have one for that, but I think they're going to attack him, force a couple of bad throws, and those guys are going to take advantage.
I like that. Yeah, I think, I'm going to do a sack and TFL one instead, because every time I try and say turnovers, it never ends up happening. So
Fair.
I'm going to say UW has 5.5 total tackles for loss, which also combines sacks and that sort of thing. So 3 sacks and 5.5 total tackles for loss. Voy has 1.5. Bandis gets 1. Tuputala and Carson each get 1. So we're at 4.5. And Kamori gets a half sack.
Okay. All right. I like where you're going with this. That's nice and well-rounded over there. So you're leaving me the leading tackler. I'll do this again. I'm gonna stick with the tradition of the seniors that we've got going on today. I say we see 2 guys get double-digit tackles, and that's Carson Bruener and Alphonzo Tuputala. Where I don't know who's going to lead them, but I think we see them both end up with 10. They've been fantastic all season long, and you got to send them out on a high note. I feel like that's a perfect way to do it.
I agree, although I think every time we pick one, it ends up being the other.
No, I got one of them right. I got the Tuputala one right at Indiana.
Okay. Well, yeah. But again, every time it's in a loss, it's almost like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah.
I'm also holding on to it because I know that's the one guaranteed win we had in that department this season.
That's fair. That's 100% fair. I'm going to give Carson the leading tackler one. You know what? I think he can do it. But for me, it's a matter of, so what else do we need in this game? What hasn't happened? I have the answer. Don't worry. But what hasn't happened consistently this season that we might need it to happen?
I hear where you're going with this, and you said it earlier, so I'm going to say a defensive touchdown is where you're going with this.
So I'm going with, so you're right, because one was actually kind of going 2 different ways with that. One is a defensive touchdown, which is why I'm going to say, since Carson leads the team in tackles, Zoe makes right and doesn't drop the ball at the 1.5 this time.
I like this.
End the story on the right way. You come and turn full face. You went heel for a little bit. Now you're baby face of the program with Carson and face of the defense and doing all these sorts of things. Zoe needs to get a touchdown in this game, and I can see him absolutely doing that because, again, no matter whether it's a scoop and score or whether it's a pick 6, I think it could go either way, where Carson more likely going to be the pick 6 guy in that one, but I think Zoe just – something about him screams, you know what? I'm going to have one last really good game at home before we send this thing off to Oregon. And then I need to put in one more there before we get to your last one, and then we'll do the score prediction.
Oh, no, I'm out. That's all I had for this week. So
you're out. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. You didn't even give Grady anything this week. Nothing for Grady.
Hey man, it's going to be cold. I don't know how many field goals they're going to want to try.
That's kind of what I'm saying is I think this game sets up for, if there's not a ton of scoring, you're going to either Jedd's doing one of 2 ways. You're either going for it on 4th or you're letting Grady kick. Grady goes 2 for 3.
Okay.
And 1 is from at least 40 yards out.
I like it. Lars, with that being said, are the everydayers ready for their score prediction? I think the answer there is yes. So I'm just going to hand it back over to you.
Man, so I've been truly going back and forth on this game. Now the spread is 4.5 as we look at this going into Friday. This is one of those where I said Penn State would win 34-20, and I got the 30 part right.
Sure.
And I do want to correct myself. I said 30, and then UW 2 + 4, not 24. So 2 + 4 = 6. So I just want to CYA myself on that. So For
Yeah,
real, though.
revisionist history. I like this.
For real, though, I do think I'm not confident in this. I do need to make that clear. I do think UW wins this game. It's a lot closer than it probably should be, and it's a lot closer than I think it will be. Give me UW 21, which I know just basically just wipes away all of our fanboy predictions. But UW 21, UCLA 10.
I like it. I like where you're going with that. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the videos tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more to offer. If you want to check out our Locked On Huskies Insider program, especially with the offseason starting to come up, we're going to have so many more recruiting things, signing day, flips, all that sort of stuff. Check it out. That's down in the description below. You get a free 2-week trial. And after that, it's $4.99 a month. We got so much fun stuff over there. We're doing some more Q&As throughout the offseason, especially because we got so much more time that we want to make sure that we just show our appreciation to all our everydayers, especially the insiders. It does mean a lot to us. And if you like everything we have to offer, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel for new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you don't miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop right down below in the comments section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you after the game.